Welcome to the Only Male Cruz Show, the We Own Your Head podcast. Discussing topics that make you say, how and where can we improve as a society? From a Black American's perspective. Copyright disclaimer regarding fair use is in full effect. The views and opinions expressed in this show, you guessed it, they're all mine. Catch us live, be ready to speak. This is a call-in show. Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, replay gang, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Let's go to work. All right. Welcome to the Only Male Cruz Show, the podcast. I am the Only Male Cruz. All right, so today we're getting into the second part of Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. So I want to kind of do just maybe a real quick recap about what we discussed on the last show. And then if there's anybody in the Twitter space, if y'all can put a 100 up or something of that nature and just let me know if you're able to hear me. Can y'all respond any type of way? That would be great. Let's see. Hold on just a minute. Look like we got one request going on. Okay, shout out to JV. How you doing, JV? Thank you, Charles, for putting that thumbs up. Appreciate that. Shout out to Real Talk with Miss Lady D in the YouTube chat. JV, you jumped in and immediately requested the mic. What's going on, sir? How you doing? Hello, JV. All right. Well, so Charles, you put the thumbs up stating that you can hear me, correct? Hello, somebody. Hello. Hey, Brother Muko. Can you put a thumbs up if you can hear me in the Twitter space? Okay, thank you, Charles. All right, as long as you can hear me, that's all that matters. All right, so, okay, right on, y'all. Appreciate y'all so much. Okay, so we're going to get into, just do a really quick recap on the, thank you, JV. Do a quick recap on what we covered. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday, to me, that was so significant, and I didn't know this until I began reading this book, and that is that in the mid-1970s, the most well-respected criminologists were predicting that the prison system would soon fade away. Now, that is just, it's a shock to me. It was a shock to me when I read it. And I just kind of wanted to make sure that I brought that up this time, because we need to keep that fact in mind. That we go from the mid-1970s to looking at and determining from these criminologists, well-respected criminologists, that the prison system would soon fade away. We go from that to us Black Americans, we dominate the jails and the prisons and all of that. So, but we're going to get right into it. And one thing that I didn't cover in this book yesterday, but I feel like it's important, so I want to start there, and then we're going to jump right to the birth of Jim Crow. And so, I think in this section right here, they're talking about the Freedmen's Bureau and the responsibility that they had and what they had attempted to do for us, specifically Black Americans. So let me give it this part right here. Equally worrisome was the state of the economy. Former slaves literally walked away from their plantations, causing panic and outrage among plantation owners. Large numbers of former slaves roamed the highways in the early years after the war. Some converged on towns and cities, others joined the federal militia. Most white people believed African Americans lacked the proper motivation to work, prompting the provisional Southern legislature to adopt the notorious Black Codes as expressed by one Alabama planter, we have the power to pass stringent police laws to govern the Negroes. This is a blessing, for they must be controlled in some way, or white people cannot live among them. While some of these codes were intended to establish systems of being peons, resembling slavery, others foreshadowed Jim Crow laws by prohibiting, among other things, interracial seating in the first class sections of railroad cars and by segregating schools. Although the convict laws enacted during this period are rarely seen as part of the Black Codes, that is a mistake. As explained by historian Walter Cohen, the main purpose of these codes was to control the freedmen, and the question of how to handle convicted Black lawbreakers was very much at the center of the control issue. 9 southern states adopted vagrancy laws, which essentially made it a criminal offense not to work and were applied selectively to Blacks. And 8 of those states enacted convict laws allowing the hiring out of county prisoners to plantation owners and private companies. Prisoners were forced to work for little or no pay. One Vagrancy Act specifically provided that all free Negroes and mulattoes over the age of 18 must have written proof of a job at the beginning of every year. Those found with no lawful employment were deemed vagrants and convicted. Clearly, the purpose of the Black Codes, in general, was the vagrancy laws in particular, was to establish another system of forced labor. In W.E.B. Du Bois' words, the codes speak for themselves. No open-minded student can read them without being convinced they meant nothing more nor less than slavery and daily toil. So the fact of the matter is, and Brother Mook, I'm about to send you a microphone, my brother. Okay? I'm about to send you a whole microphone. The thing about that is, as far as this being important, is because we do have a non-melanated population that says, "Hey, it wasn't me. I wasn't. I didn't own slaves. I don't currently own slaves, and it's not my fault, and this and that, and so on and so forth." Well, you can't play like you don't know what time it is, because really, even without me or anybody else saying it, all you got to do is look at the laws and how they were written, how they are currently on the books, and that tells you all you need to know. They were designed to disenfranchise and keep us, Black Americans, disenfranchised. So does that mean we need to revolt and go head to head with every person who of non-melanated skin? No, but we need to have a conversation, and the non-melanated individuals, y'all need to be real in the conversation. So let me shout out the people in the YouTube. Tatiana Harris, hey girl, what's going on? Real Talk with Lady D, and Stephanie Luke in the house. So appreciate all of y'all pulling up in the YouTube and the Twitter space. Brother Muko, what's T? How you doing this morning?
How you doing, Cruz? What's up, everybody? Space. Hey, this is an extraordinary topic, and one that I'm glad a Black woman, is brought to the forefront. This is something that Claude Anderson has spoke on for decades, and I mean decades. But this also bleeds into our mind frame of having a job. You know what I'm saying? This bleeds all into our addiction of getting jobs instead of starting businesses. Okay? And when people think that this is not genetic, I beg you, think twice. This is genetic. So when you look at a person and think that they're lazy, or look at a person and think certain stereotypes, we have to factor this in. At one point in time, it wasn't just illegal for us to read or to learn how to read or to know how to read, but it was illegal for us not to have a job by the white supremacists. So of course, then they would lock you up and pay you like a illegal, undocumented person, and call it, and that was actually their free labor.
Right.
So that the white person or the slave master could lay on their ass and you know,
Get paid. Get
claim,
rich with it.
yeah, get
Mm-hmm.
all the fruit, get
Yeah.
all the fruits of labor.
Of our
So
labor.
I'm gonna let you go on. You were definitely cooking. You were definitely cooking, and this is something that everybody in the space, if you haven't read already, but read Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Dirty Little Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he reveals a lot of this, and this is real. These are facts. This is a documented fact,
Yeah.
and not by white hands. This is what this. So I always implore black people telling black people stories. Let's be suspicious of white people telling black people stories.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, go on, Mel Cruz. I
Awesome.
just want to hear you cook up some more.
Hey, I thank you so much. And then if everybody in the Twitter space, if y'all can share the show, that'd be great. Also, my YouTube channel, the link to my YouTube channel is in the Jumbotron. Do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, you don't gotta move in to the YouTube channel, but please hit the subscribe button, like the video, and let's get it out. This is a conversation that needs to be had, not just by us for us, but for everybody, because some people want to be educated. So let's help them do that. All right. So subscribe to the YouTube channel if you don't mind, please. All right. So let me get back into this. Ultimately, the black codes were overturned, and a slew of federal civil rights legislation protecting the newly freed slaves was passed during the relatively brief but extraordinary period of black advancement known as the Reconstruction era. The impressive legislative achievements of this period include the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, bestowing full citizenship upon African Americans, the 14th Amendment, prohibiting states from denying citizens due process and equal protection under the laws, and the 15th Amendment, providing that the right to vote should not be denied on account of race, and the Ku Klux Klan Acts, which, among other things, declared interference with voting a federal offense and the violent infringement of civil rights as a crime. The new legislation also provided for federal supervision of voting and authorized the president to send the army and suspend the writ of habeas corpus in districts declared to be in a state of insurrection against the federal government. Whew. Boy, it would be beautiful if we had something like that right now for ourselves, something like that um, it was actually specific to Black Americans, like the Asian hate crime bill. Whew, Lord have mercy. In addition to federal civil rights legislation, the Reconstruction era brought the expansion of the Freedmen's Bureau, the agency charged with the responsibility of providing food, clothing, fuel, and other forms of assistance to destitute former slaves. A public education system emerged in the South, which afforded many blacks and poor whites their first opportunity to learn to read and write. When the Reconstruction era was fraught with corruption and arguably doomed by the lack of land reform, the sweeping economic and political developments in that period did appear, at least for a time, to have the potential to seriously undermine, if not completely eradicate, the racial caste system in the South. With the protection of federal troops, African Americans began to vote in large numbers and seize control in some areas of the local political apparatus. Literacy rates climbed, and educated blacks began to populate legislatures, open schools, and initiate successful businesses. In 1867, at the dawn of the Reconstruction era, no black man held political office in the South. Yet, 3 years later, at least 15% of all Southern elected officials were black. This is particularly extraordinary in light of the fact that 15 years after the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the high watermark of the civil rights movement, fewer than 8% of all Southern elected officials were black. At the same time, however, many of the new civil rights laws were proving to be largely symbolic. Notably absent from the 15th Amendment, for example, was language prohibiting the states from imposing educational, residential, or other qualifications for voting. thus leaving the door open to states to impose poll tax, literacy tests, and other devices to prevent blacks from voting. Other laws revealed themselves as more an assertion of principle than direct federal intervention into Southern affairs, because enforcement required African Americans to take their cases to federal courts, a costly and time consuming procedure that was a practical impossibility for the vast majority of those who had claims. Now, I'm going to stop and do a sidebar real quick because I got to say this. We got, what's my man's name? Crump. And shout out to Trouble. Ms. Trouble. Shout out for being here. What's my man's name? Crump. Um,
Ben Crump.
yeah, Ben Crump. Now he takes, he does all these lawsuits and sues for large sums of money. And I did read something where he said his objective is to get the maximum amount of money out of these lawsuits because he believes that this is how they'll put an end to this racial disparity and all these things that go on with us. But I think, or somebody needs to pick up the mantle and take it a step further and start while he gets the money, also attach some amendments to the Constitution or some changes in some of these laws in some of these states where he is actually winning these cases or bringing lawsuits. That should be part of the deal in my view. And shout out to Tatiana Harris in the YouTube streets talking about this is Michelle's book. I read it. Yes, great book. Mel, you are doing God's work right now. Thank you, Tatiana Harris. You always say the right things. Trouble, what's going on, girl? What? How y'all feel? And shout out to everybody in the Twitter space. What's up, girl?
Hey, sister girl, what's
Hey.
good with you? Doing all right. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sir. Good respect.
Mm-hmm.
So I 100% agree with you. Ben Crump says that his goal is to get the maximum amount of money. You could look at that one or two ways.
Mm-hmm.
It could be exactly what he says it is for the reason he says it is. But at the same time, the lawyers and attorneys get 33% or they get a large percentage of that. So if I was the attorney, I'd be trying to get the maximum amount too.
Right.
If it's not coming with legislation that's going to impede, the things that are going on that's taking place for the reason for the lawsuit, then America has no money, no problem with paying this money out. It's
Right.
coming from the taxpayer's dime. It's not like it's coming from some reserved place that's going to hurt them. It's not going to hurt them to give up that, those debt notes.
Right.
So you're absolutely right when you say that it needs to come with legislation and
Yeah.
constitutional amendments.
Absolutely, absolutely, and at least make the effort. At least because he gets national attention when he does these things. So if anything, you may not get it the first time you ask for it, Crump, but damn, at least ask for it. Ask for it, bro. All right, so let me get off my soapbox. Like we were saying here, it's costly. It was costly at that time. It says here that other laws revealed themselves as more of an assertion of principle than direct federal intervention into Southern affairs because enforcement required African Americans to take their cases to federal courts, a costly and time consuming procedure that was a practical impossibility for the vast majority of those who had claims. Most blacks were too poor to sue to enforce their civil rights, and no organization like the NAACP yet existed to spread the risks and the costs of litigation. Moreover, the threat of violence often deterred blacks from pressing legitimate claims, making the civil rights of former slaves largely illusionary, existing on paper but rarely to be found in real life. All right. So I wanted to make sure we covered that and articulated that and put that in the atmosphere because this book was written 10 years ago. She talking about something way back in the 1800s and now it's 2023 and this book could have been written yesterday at this point. It could have been written yesterday at this point. No lies detected. Okay? So let's jump in here, and if you have the book, we're on page 30. We're about to jump into right under the subtitle, "The Birth of Jim Crow." So let's get a thorough understanding of what Jim Crow is. So it says, the backlash against the gains of African Americans in the Reconstruction era was swift and severe. As African Americans obtained political power and began the long march toward greater social and economic equality, whites reacted with panic and outrage. Southern conservatives vowed to reverse Reconstruction and sought the abolition of the Freedmen's Bureau and all political instrumentalities designed to secure Negro supremacy. Their campaign to redeem the South was reinforced by a resurgent Ku Klux Klan, which fought a terrorist campaign against Reconstruction governments and local leaders, complete with bombings, lynchings, and mob violence. Now, we got trouble up in here. We got Brother Muko. Both of y'all have a mic. Y'all know how we do. Y'all can unmute your mic at any time. Do you have any comment about just that piece right there?
Yeah, I let Trouble go first. I'm in line.
Oh, okay. All right. Trouble, where you at? And if you don't, that's cool. I'm gonna keep on reading. But y'all know y'all can just jump off the mic and say, wait, hold up, man. Wait, what? Yeah. All right. So the terrorist campaign proved highly successful. Redemption resulted in the withdrawal of federal troops from the South and the effective abandonment of African Americans and all those who had fought for or supported an egalitarian racial order. The federal government no longer made any effort to enforce federal civil rights legislation, and funding for the Freedmen's Bureau was slashed to such a degree that the agency became virtually defunct, i.e., meaning it wasn't no dollars in it. It no longer served a purpose, even if it wanted to. Okay? Once again, vagrancy laws and other laws defining activities such as mischief and insulting gestures as crimes were enforced vigorously against blacks. The aggressive enforcement of these criminal offenses opened up an enormous market for convict leasing, in which prisoners were contracted out as laborers to the highest private bidder. Douglas Blackman, in Slavery by Another Name, describes how tens of thousands of African Americans were arbitrarily arrested during this period, many of them hit with court costs and fines, which had to be worked off in order to secure their release. And let me do a sidebar. That's what they found out. And RIP to Mike Brown when they did that federal overview or review with, what's our man's name, Eric, who was the Attorney General at the time. They found that that's what was going on in St. Louis, where if you turned a corner too fast or too slow, you got a ticket. They were using the legality of being able to ticket everybody as a way to generate revenue for the counties and the cities and the this and the that. But again, it was Black people who were primarily impacted by these actions. And of course, they can't vote. By giving them a ticket, throwing them in jail, things of that nature, you're restricting their opportunity to have a say in the government. And that's baloney. Everybody knows what they're doing. All right, into my sidebar there. Okay. So Douglas Blackman in Slavery by Another Name describes how tens of thousands of African Americans were arbitrarily arrested during this period, many of them hit with court costs and fines, which had to be worked off in order to secure their release. With no means to pay off their debts, prisoners were sold as forced laborers to lumber camps, brickyards, railroads, farms, plantations, and dozens of corporations throughout the South. Death rates were shockingly high, for the private contractors had no interest in the health and well-being of their laborers, unlike the earlier slave owners who needed their slaves at a minimum to be healthy enough to survive hard labor. Laborers were subject to almost continual lashing by long horse whips, and those who collapsed due to injuries or exhaustion were often left to die. Now, come on.
Does this sound familiar, y'all? And thank you again, Mel Cruz, for this space.
Mm-hmm.
But does this sound familiar?
Sure
does. Does this not sound like the movie Life? And I know I know, and this is not comedy. This is not something to laugh at, because that's what was being expressed through all that comedy in that movie.
Right.
Okay? The old chain gang, the old being arrested for all those petty, dumbass crimes they know we didn't commit.
Come on.
You know, the raping of white women they know we didn't do. All the lynchings. All this was centered around keeping us working for them.
At the lowest rate.
Right. At the lowest rate. That's what Dr. Claude Anderson. That's why I keep him in my profile pic. That's what Dr. Claude Anderson always talks about. This permanent underclass that they're trying to make us into.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So this Jim Crow now, I think we're starting. I hope that everyone is starting to see that Jim Crow really didn't go anywhere.
Come on. I said
all they did was refine it.
Come on with it. I said it yesterday.
And all of this is white supremacy. See, we got to get out of this thing of what Mel Cruz right now is describing, and what Michelle Alexander is describing. She's describing racism, white supremacy. See, we got to stop calling it the racial wealth gap, and stop calling it micro and macro, and all these other things. Look, it's racism, white supremacy. Mistreatment is mistreatment. Yeah. Whether it's in the doctor's office, whether it's in a college, and I got my big quotation fingers up, whether it's in a college course accredited university dorm room. You know, no matter where it is, mistreatment is mistreatment.
Yes.
And so I that's what they're describing here, and it is dead on point.
Come on.
Dead on point.
Come on. Jim Crow is in the DMs. He's in the DMs. Y'all, my YouTube channel is in the Jumbotron. Please subscribe to it. If you like me, subscribe to my YouTube channel, would you? Trouble, I thought I saw your mic getting ready to unmute. Were you about to chime in on something?
That was before, but yeah, I'm just listening to what you're saying, and it reminded me of this project I was helping my son with during Black History Month about the Reconstruction era. And, you know, it was a whole jealousy thing about Black people once we've gotten freed, making more money than them, because we were the ones who were doing all of the work. And they really weren't skilled in a lot of areas. And because we were able to get the work and set certain prices was why they really kind of attacked, you know, the Freedmen's Bureau so that they could send us back into that slave-like position. Because they weren't getting, you know, white people weren't getting paid as much because they couldn't do the work. Right. They didn't know how to do the work because all of the centuries that we were doing the work.
Come on. And,
you know,
and not only that, we perfected the work, and we perfected it through slavery. So while y'all lashing us, we perfected how to maximize, how to increase productivity. But that was just our natural inherent ingenuity. So it wasn't because they whipped and beat us. It's because we came to the table as geniuses, okay, as able. So yeah, once Reconstruction shows up, we probably were out businessing them because we already knew what time it was. They, on the other hand, didn't, because all they did, either, you know, as offspring of these slave masters and such, they didn't have to put no work in. So by the time we get freed, now we got offspring of slave masters who are adults and should be working, but they don't know how to get down like we get down because we've been getting down. Okay? Ooh.
Yeah, because Black folks was able to rent land or own land, and because of that, we had our own fields, and so we weren't in their fields anymore.
Right.
So they needed something that would take that control back from us and give it back to the white folks. They even went so far as to, you know, start putting them on contracts. So if for some reason you decide you didn't want to work for this white person anymore, well, your contract said you had to give them a year's worth of labor. So if you came out of that contract for whatever reason, whether you were sick or whether he was cheating you or whatever, they could now jail you for up to a year. So that you would work that debt off. Like, I don't owe you anything, but I owe you a year as per the contract. So now I have to do a year of hard labor, and they could say what they wanted to say, whether they kept you or not after that year. They turned it around on our children, and now, children now have to go back out into the fields, and then they hit our women. So it's a whole cycle that came with the backlash of the Reconstruction. But yes, sir.
Yes, indeed.
Now, slow down, because y'all are cooking and y'all experienced, you know what I'm saying? So we got to understand that this is Oh, this ain't a recorded space, but it's probably going to be on my girl Mel Cruz YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
we got to slow walk this because what y'all saying is absolutely correct. But I think an intricate part is always missing, and I want to bring it to the light right now.
Come on with it.
Because all this wouldn't have been done if the slave masters didn't institute a thing called forgiveness. Okay? This made it possible for their offspring not to be responsible, okay, for what their fathers did. Not just to not be responsible, but not being responsible for cleaning it up. Not being responsible for repairing it. So forgiveness is how all these things that Sister Mel and Sister Trouble are speaking on, which are absolutely 100% fact. But what's missing is the institution of forgiveness. They made forgiveness a religion. They made it so that, hey, if you don't forgive us, you know, we're sorry. And if you don't forgive us, then God isn't going to accept you in heaven. See, forgiveness is not for me. It's not for me. It's for you.
Yes. Yes.
You know, all that trickery with the language that Mel just made a point about. The language. Miss Michelle Alexander made a point when Mel was just reading her words. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The language is what they can control. And this English language, this marketplace language, this cultic language is a very confusing language. Because, see, we're using this language to manage our interactions between each other. When this language was made for marketplace only, it was only made for marketplace interaction only.
Right. So
when you try to apply marketplace language to something like romance, you're going to get disaster. When you try to put a marketplace language to pertain to a topic called sex, you'll get a bunch of confusion. This is what we're in today. That language.
Yeah.
And one of those serious weapons that they use on us is that weapon of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And y'all can continue. I just wanted to add that.
And I do want to shout out Tatiana Harris, who in the YouTube street said they use religion / forgiveness, i.e. Uncle Tom's Cabin. And you got that right, Tatiana. You got that right. Let me keep running through this book. Convicts had no meaningful legal rights at this time and no effective redress. They were understood quite literally to be slaves of the state. The 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution had abolished slavery, but allowed one major exception. Slavery remained appropriate as punishment for a crime. In a landmark decision by the Virginia Supreme Court, Ruffin v. Commonwealth, issued at the height of Southern redemption, the court put to rest any notion that convicts were legally distinguishable from slaves. For a time during his service in the penitentiary, he is in a state of penal servitude to the state. He, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law in its humanity accords to him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. He is a civilator mortis, and his estate, if he has any, is administered like that of a dead man. The state of Mississippi eventually moved from hiring convict labor to organizing its own convict labor camp, known as Parchment Farm. It was not alone. During the decade following redemption, the convict population grew 10 times faster than the general population. Prisoners became younger and blacker, and the length of their sentences soared. It was the nation's first prison boom, and, as they are today, the prisoners were disproportionately black. After a brief period of progress during Reconstruction, African Americans found themselves once again virtually defenseless. The criminal justice system was strategically employed to force African Americans back into a system of extreme repression and control, a tactic that would continue to prove successful for generations to come. Even as convict leasing faded away, strategic forms of exploitation and repression emerged anew. As Blackman notes, the apparent demise of leasing prisoners seemed a harbinger of a new day. But the harsher reality of the South was that the new post-Civil War neo-slavery was evolving, not disappearing. Redemption marked a turning point in the quest by dominant whites for a new racial equilibrium, a racial order that would protect their economic, political, and social interests in a world without slavery. Yet a clear consensus among whites about the new racial order about what the new racial order should be was still lacking. The Redeemers who overthrew Reconstruction were inclined to retain such segregation practices as had already emerged, but they displayed no apparent disposition to expand or universalize the system. All right, that was a lot. That was a lot. But let me keep going. 3 additional philosophies of race relations were put forward to compete for the region's support, all of which rejected the doctrines of extreme racism espoused by the Redeemers. And those 3 philosophies are liberalism, conservatism, and radicalism. And I do want to say this very quickly. As this book indicates earlier, and we covered it yesterday, or as you were Friday, whatever day, last time we was all together, there was a time where melanated and non-melanated individuals worked together. It was poor against the wealthy. And one thing that was brought out in the reading the other day was where the statement was something like, we have to make sure that this country, the way it's set up, is that it protects the minority, opulent, wealthy folks against the vast, underserved, underprivileged, low socioeconomic people. So essentially, they wrote all these laws to benefit them, the opulent, the wealthy, the oligarchs. Okay? Oh boy. The liberal philosophy of race relations emphasized the stigma of segregation and the hypocrisy of a government that celebrates freedom and equality, yet denies both on account of race. Okay, that's liberal. The philosophy born in the North never gained much traction among Southern whites or blacks. The conservative philosophy, by contrast, attracted wide support and was implemented in various contexts over a considerable period of time. Conservatives blamed liberals for pushing blacks ahead of their proper station in life and placing blacks in positions they were unprepared to fill, a circumstance that had allegedly contributed to their downfall. They warned blacks that some Redeemers were not satisfied with having decimated Reconstruction and were prepared to wage an aggressive war against blacks throughout the South. With some success, the conservatives reached out to African American voters, reminding them that they had something to lose as well as gain, and that the liberals' preoccupation with political and economic equality presented the danger of losing all that blacks had gained so far. Now, I'm sorry, but that's problematic. Any comment before I get on the soapbox?
Yeah, the this is this is the birth of the conservatives and the Sambos.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And this goes hand in hand. One white preacher said that Negroes are docile and forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
They love their white masters better than they love themselves. And so, this is the birth of not just conservatives and Sambos, but the thing that Dr. Clark Anderson always talks about, which is meritorious manumission.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that Shepard Pratt Award, that award for you giving your life for your slave master. You know what I'm saying? Right. And your slave master now, we all see, comes in all different types of forms. Why? Because white supremacy controls every area of people activity. So they tricking us at every end. And if you don't understand the details of what Sister Mel Cruz is laying down and what Sister Michelle Alexander is discussing in this book, you will be confused about everything else that you think you know.
Absolutely. And the thing that got me messed up, and for the people in YouTube, I did drop the link. So if you want to jump up and chime in on this conversation, hit the link. You are more than welcome. The thing about this is, like, anytime anytime we are having an issue and having a discussion about things that are disproportionately impacting Black Americans, have you noticed where some people will come in and say, well, see, that's the Democrats. And then somebody else will come in on the flip side and say, well, see, the Republicans this and the Republicans that. And this back and forth has been going on for the absolute longest. It's been going on for the longest. And so how are these conservatives going to try to tell us, well, y'all got more to lose. Don't side with the people that's talking about economic equality and success and things of that nature. Don't side with them. Side with us. Because if you don't, y'all got more to lose. But where are we at? That was then, and this is now, and it's the same boat.
And you're right, Mel. You said this been going on for a long time. I'm gonna give a few examples.
Come on with it.
In 1676, a faithful Black slave named Jethro saved the lives of whites in the town of Taunton, Massachusetts, by warning them of an attack by the chief King Philip and his Indian tribe. This was in 1776. Okay. Now, conservatives and Sambos, this is what this has reformed into, not reformed, but refined into. In 1710, the governor of Virginia freed Negro Willis, and that was his name, by the way, Negro Willis, a free slave, for exposing a slave revolt. Willis became the first slave to win freedom under the new meritorious manumissions policy. See, they made this a policy in 1710, y'all. In 1710. So when Mel said this has been going on, this has been going on. This is something that they have been refining. And now they're calling it under the guise of conservatives, liberals, left wing, right wing, minorities. See, we still playing their game. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you one more real quick. Between 1710 and 1865, there were over 265 reported slave revolts. None of them succeeded. Because fellow slaves revealed the revolt to the slave masters and the white authorities. Now, I know I ain't saying nothing that nobody don't know here. You know what I'm saying? But this tends to fall to the back of our memories, or we tend to get what I call amnesia, okay?
Right.
And we tend to forget the instigators of this whole shit, okay? Everything that is wrong in our situation is the white supremacist fault. And I'm not saying this to get myself off the hook, to get Mel off the hook, to get anybody off the hook. But we got to recognize that we cannot forget the instigator, because if we do, guess what keeps happening? Racism, white supremacy, Jim Crow.
Right.
We're fine.
Right. Totally agree. Shout out to One Love Rella, who has graced the stage. Thank you to everybody who has pulled up on the YouTube streets, pulled up in the Twitter space. Y'all, the YouTube channel link is in the chat. Do me a favor, subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. Rella, you just jumped up. Want to know if there's something else you want to add. Tatiana is laughing at you, Brother Muko, with that statement you made about amnegronesia. Ain't that it? Indeed. All right, well, I'm going to... Hey, Rella. Hey. Thanks for joining. What's going on?
Hey, always. I'm sorry I'm late. I was, looking at the big three. Shout out to definitely Ice Cube and the work that he's been trying to do with the contract with Black Americans. I wanted to say, I don't necessarily think it's amnesia. I really believe that it is that because we have been influenced so much by gatekeepers that people tend to not allow people to walk through the information. And then we have to think about it too. These conversations I think that we have, they're not being had on such a
larger scale,
macro scale, right? Well, larger scale, but macro scale, because when you think about, what people are really getting into in society from each generation, they're not really having conversations to continuously connect the dots. What made the civil rights movement and all the movements so,
effective
is that they actually had meetings. They had meetings at businesses. They had meetings with the community. They were spreading the message throughout the community. And I think that we have not done a good job, an effective job with utilizing, even the technology that sometimes our demisers create. We now are trying to reinvigorate and reintroduce society into information that is factual information. And so for people who on a day-to-day basis don't look up this information, they're not going to have the knowledge, of what Muko and what you were talking about, and even what Michelle Alexander brought up in her book.
Absolutely. You're not going to be hip to the square. Let me keep going through this book, and that's really a solid point, and that's why doing these type of things are important. That's why subscribing to the YouTube channel helps, because it gets it in the algorithm, and it gets more people who are like-minded to chime in on the conversation. So anyway, let's keep it moving. The radical philosophy offered for many African Americans the most promise. It was predicated on a searing critique of large corporations, particularly railroads and the wealthy elite in the North and South. The radicals of the late 19th century, who later formed the Populist Party, viewed the privileged classes as conspiring to keep poor whites and blacks locked into a subordinate political and economic position. For many African American voters, the populist approach was preferable to the paternalism of liberals. Populists preached an equalitarianism of want and poverty, the kinship of a common grievance and a common oppressor, as described by Tom Watson, a prominent populist leader, in a speech advocating a union between black and white farmers. You are kept apart that you may be separately fleeced of your earnings. You are made to hate each other because upon that hatred is rested the keystone of the arc of financial despotism that enslaves you both. You are deceived and blinded that you may not see how this race antagonism perpetuates a monetary system which beggars both. In an effort to demonstrate their commitment to a genuinely multiracial working class movement against white elites, the populists made strides toward racial integration, a symbol of their commitment to class-based unity. African Americans throughout the South responded with great hope and enthusiasm, eager to be true partners in a struggle for social justice. According to Woodward, it is altogether probable that during the brief populist upheaval in the 90s, Negroes and native whites achieved a greater community of mind and harmony of political purpose than ever before or since in the South. Now, the challenges inherent in creating the alliance sought by the populists were formidable, as race prejudice ran the highest among the very white populations to which the populist appeal was specifically addressed, the depressed lower economic classes. Nevertheless, the populist movement initially enjoyed remarkable success in the South, fueled by a wave of discontent aroused by the severe agrarian depression of the 1800s and the 1890s. The populists took direct aim at the conservatives, who were known as compromising a party of privilege, and they achieved a stunning series of political victories throughout the region. Alarmed by the success of the populace and the apparent potency of the alliance between poor and working class whites and African Americans, the conservatives raised the cry of white supremacy and resorted to the tactics they had employed in their quest for redemption, including fraud, intimidation, bribery, and terror. Oh boy. Hello, somebody. If you want to jump up off the mic, you're welcome
Now,
to. Yeah.
doesn't this sound? This is the ongoing story of the enriched and the enslaved,
Mm-hmm.
aka black people have made everybody rich but themselves.
Mm.
Okay, from 1660 to 1860, white society invests nearly $8 billion in black slaves, which is more than what they invested in all their other businesses and government enterprises. All right,
Mm-hmm.
that is ongoing today. Okay, they invest more money in confusing us than they invest in their own technological businesses. Because if it wasn't true, China wouldn't be so ahead in technology than American technology.
Well,
Yeah,
and you know what, Brother Moko, here's the other thing. I'm so glad you brought that up because they had an article out a couple months ago, might have been in February, where now the banks, I think it was Wells Fargo, they were saying, hey, you know what? America has lost out on $20 billion due to racism. And they were able to break it down. And of course, this made sense to the banks because the banks want all the money. But the bank goes on to say that, hey, we were with America being racist by one, not allowing Black Americans to get mortgages, not allowing loans and things for Black Americans to start businesses, and then the racism spews out, or the disenfranchisement to themselves, the white Americans. It spreads out because when you don't allow a Black person to get a mortgage, guess what? Y'all don't get no interest on the mortgage. When you don't give a Black American a loan to start their own business, guess what? One, y'all don't get the interest on that loan, and you also prevent revenue from going out into the country. So if a white man owns the lumber and you're a furniture, you create furniture, or if whatever, by limiting and on the base of racism, you don't allow Black Americans to get a piece of this apple pie. Okay, the country has really done itself in, and the amount they said, I think it was like $21 trillion, something of that nature. When we looked at our GDP as a country, that number either exceeded or came very close to that. So can you imagine what position our country would be in if we didn't have these racist strategies employed? There'd be a lot of people would be a lot better off. Okay.
right.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Anyway, let me keep reading through here because we're discussing Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. And right now we're in the sub-chapter piece of the birth of Jim Crow. So now we're getting a good idea of the mindset of what it was at the time, at the birth of Jim Crow. So segregation laws were proposed as part of a deliberate effort to drive a wedge between poor whites and African Americans. These discriminatory barriers were designed to encourage lower-class whites to retain a sense of superiority over blacks, making it far less likely that they would sustain interracial political alliances aimed at toppling the white elite. The laws were, in effect, another racial bribe. As William Julius Wilson had noted, as long as poor whites directed their hatred and frustration against the black competitor, the planters were relieved of class hostility directed against them. Indeed, in order to overcome the well-founded suspicions of poor and illiterate whites that they, as well as blacks, were in danger of losing their right to vote, the leaders of the movement pursued an aggressive campaign of white supremacy in every state prior to black disenfranchisement. Ultimately, the populace caved to the pressure and abandoned their former allies. While the populist movement was at the peak of zeal, Woodward observed, the two races had surprised each other and astonished their opponents by the harmony they achieved and the goodwill with which they cooperated. But when it became clear that the conservatives would stop at nothing to decimate their alliance, the biracial partnership dissolved, and the populist leaders realigned themselves with conservatives. Even Tom Watson, who had been among the most forceful advocates for the interracial alliance of farmers, concluded that populist principles could never be fully embraced by the South until blacks were eliminated from politics. Now, somebody jump up off the mic, holla at me. Shout out in the YouTube streets to Shrink and Sharon. Thanks for pulling up. The link is in the chat. Feel free to grab a mic in the Twitter Spaces or right here on YouTube. Any comments from anybody?
I hate to keep coming off my
No,
mic,
please do. Keep it up.
But, you said something earlier when they had to start giving blacks certain positions. I'll say back in like Lincoln days, or I'll say even better when the very first president, John Hanson, was president. Blacks played in politics. They played politics, meaning they didn't act, even the positions that they held, they couldn't actually do anything. Not they couldn't. Their positions were like null and void. It's like having a apprentice in the room. You know what I'm saying? Your apprentice don't make no decisions. He can't do anything for anybody. You know what I'm saying? So this was our position in politics all the way up until the so-called, and I put my big ass quotation fingers up because I don't even like using the term, the civil rights era. You know what I'm saying? When we got black mayors into positions, and you start getting an influx of black mayors throughout the states, throughout the United States. Then now they can do things, but now they're getting assassinated for it. You know what I'm saying? And this is still happening today here in Baltimore. We had an assistant state's attorney, brother Jonathan Luna, stabbed 38 times on Interstate 83, ruled a suicide today. Okay, Kent Hurst, another city council, Baltimore city councilman, shot like 3-4 times in a goddamn shopping center that I frequent, that I used to frequent. You know what I'm saying? And suspects of the white mayor that was here at the time. Name all up in the mix. You know what I'm saying? So it's still political assassination and things going on. Now we're at a point where we can actually do things, but it's still a penalty. And
let me jump in here. The original 33 were Georgia's politicians, and they weren't the only ones. They were also assembly members that actually did get into office. I think at the time, and this is the part where really deep diving into the structure of what happened to the colored Negro population, the enslaved population that actually came out of emancipation. And Ida B. Wells talks about this. They actually made it a point. Frederick Douglass, in his writings, makes it a point to tell the stories of people who did get into positions of politics. And they started to actually make great strides, and they started to actually make change. And what they were always faced with, if you look up the original 33 right after Reconstruction, they were faced with the Andrew Johnsons of the world. They were faced with the advancing that the enslaved population was doing the moment they started teaching each other how to read. It was a mandatory thing. And so getting into politics was almost a must. So the conversation around even, what it looks like to have a black majority state, that was the movement moving forward. I mean, you had people like Benjamin Banneker, who was so gifted that he constructed Washington, D.C. That's how smart he was. And then you had people like Peter, Henry McNeil, Ulysses Malcolm, I mean, James Ward, Alfred. You had so many people, Alfred Richardson, who all these people were, if you will, so influential that we don't even realize the things that we have today were off of the backs of the ones who actually went into politics for our benefit,
Right.
trying to sustain and build um, uh, a place for us that
Right.
got us to where we are today. And so, yes, as much as you do see assassinations that are happening, they're happening because the more people do become aware of the positions that these people held, that our ancestors held, they realize why it's important for us to, if you will, crash the board.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to use my basketball analogies because people only realize things from maybe a scarcity mindset of not knowing, but then they don't understand why it's important for us to get into positions of authority.
Right.
And I believe our ancestors knew that. And as much as they tried to capture these positions,
right.
there was always the destruction of the other populace who committed mass genocide.
Right.
And we need to definitely uncover that. And Michelle Alexander's book is doing a great job with the new Jim Crow.
Yeah, absolutely. She's laying it out, and she's letting us know what the mindset was. And the thing is that this mindset doesn't appear to be new. That's the whole thing. So this is history repeating itself, and it's also history having morphed and evolved into different language. And Rella, we talked about that yesterday, into different languages, and it's just repackaged. It's the same thing. It's just repackaged. Let me get back to this part here, because we're almost finished with this section. The agricultural depression, taken together with a series of failed reforms and broken political promises, had pyramided to a climax of social tensions. Dominant whites concluded that it was in their political and economic interests to scapegoat blacks, and permission to hate came from sources that had formerly denied it, including Northern liberals eager to reconcile with the South. Southern conservatives, who had once promised blacks protection from racial extremism, and populists, who cast aside their dark-skinned allies when the partnership fell under siege. History seemed to repeat itself, just as the white elite had successfully driven a wedge between poor whites and blacks following Beacon's rebellion by creating the institution of black slavery. Another racial caste system was emerging nearly 2 centuries later, in part due to efforts by white elites to decimate a multiracial alliance of poor people. By the turn of the 20th century, every state in the South had laws on the books that disenfranchised blacks and discriminated against them in virtually every sphere of life, lending sanction to racial ostracization that extended to schools, churches, housing, jobs, restrooms, hotels, restaurants, hospitals, orphanages, prisons, funeral homes, morgues, and cemeteries. Politicians competed with each other by proposing and passing ever more stringent, oppressive, and downright ridiculous legislation, such as laws specifically prohibiting blacks and whites from playing chess together. The public symbols and constant reminders of black subjugation were supported by whites across the political spectrum, though the plight of poor whites remained largely unchanged. For them, the racial bribe was primarily psychological. They didn't get nothing out the deal. The new racial order, known as Jim Crow, a term apparently derived from a minstrel show character, was regarded as the final settlement, the return to sanity, and the permanent system. Of course, the earlier system of Racialized social control, slavery, had also been regarded as final, sane, and permanent by its supporters. Like the earlier system, Jim Crow seemed natural, and it became difficult to remember that alternative paths were not only available at one time, but nearly embraced. And those permanent paths, from my interpretation, are the multiracial alliances, the black and the poor white. And the only thing that split that up was that racial bribe. When the government said, oh, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make y'all feel better. And like you're better than black people. But it didn't change their station in life. They were still poor. They were still socioeconomically deprived. Um, all they got to say was, hey, at least I'm not black, but you might as well be damn near. Whew. And
They hit
go ahead.
logically.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Trouble. Go ahead.
No, I was saying they hit them psychologically. Just when I forgot who it was said that the lowest white man is better than the richest black man. So they hit them there. And if you remember the movie Rosewood, there was a scene in that movie that I always reference back to when the white man had made a comment about the brother and his woman having a piano in their home. And he was salty. He was real salty about it. He was, well, why do they have, basically, why do they have a piano? I don't have a piano. And the other white man said, well, can you play one? And he was like, well, no, that's not the point. So it hits them on a psychological level that they're not just on a equal playing field, but they're above us at all costs. Even if we have more than them, they are still better than us. They hit them not only on a psychological level, but it was emotional or rather political blackmail when it came to the or the biracial collaboration together. That was basically political blackmail, because even in the movie Rosewood, once again, there was that one white man that they had. They always had a white hero that's Negro friendly. And so if you're Negro friendly, you're a race traitor. You're never lover. And so there's that aspect that kind of hits at them too, that makes them kind of, I got to be all in for my race, because I can't thinking being friendly towards you all, because if I do, I'm a traitor to my race, and all bad things are going to now happen to me.
Right. Well, Trouble, I want to ask you this question. I want to ask you this question. So based on that the white man goes in, he sees the black family has a piano. He doesn't know how to play it, but it hit different when a black family has a piano and can play. How does it hit when a white man who is socioeconomically impoverished, when he sees a white man who is, rolling in the dough? How does he psychologically, how does he process the fact that they have a piano and he still doesn't have one?
Well, it still hits different. It hits the mind different, because at least they're white, and that's a win for the whole race. But when you Negroes have something that I, as a white man, don't have, even if my neighbor has one, think you better than me. You a uppity Negro. How?
And that's what he said too, Sister Trouble. He was like, "What, they think they better than me?"
See, and Tatiana Harris in the YouTube streets is saying, what's the name of that movie? It's the movie Rosewood, Tatiana. I just watched it again about a couple months ago on Tubi. And Tubi got it going on. So it's Rosewood. And you can catch it on Tubi, I believe. So
I'm surprised that a lot of people haven't seen that movie, but I implore everybody to watch that movie at least once a week, because there's so many messages in that movie. I mean, they put Don Cheadle, Florida from Good Times. They did extra role. They did a wonderful thing to do that movie for us, and to give all that truth that they gave, because even when they was hanging the brother Sam, and I know Sister Trouble won't remember this part, when they was hanging brother Sam and they didn't beat him up and everything, trying to get him to snitch on the white Mason, and he looked at them white men and he said, you can kill me, but you can't eat me. And I thought, I remember when I seen Rosewood, I was about 16 years old. And when I heard him say, I had to rewind that. I rewind that thing because it was on DVD. I rewind it like 100 times.
Yeah.
You can't eat me. And then I got the book without sanctuary. And then I seen where barbecuing came from.
Right.
Okay? When y'all read these books and read the book Without Sanctuary and they tell you where barbecuing came from and what they actually did to us in a barbecue, you won't never grill a pizza or go to another cookout again.
Come on.
I promise you that.
Come on.
Okay? So these people are sadistic in a whole different kind of manner.
Mm-hmm.
And Rosewood reveals a lot of those messages. So thanks for even bringing that up.
Yeah.
That's a good ass learning tool right there.
No doubt. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So
yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I probably wouldn't, I don't like to call the term sometimes barbecuing, but I'm definitely not going to allow them to stop me from gathering and finding family and friends because we weren't doing the savagery that they was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about people that was running around here eating themselves because they didn't know how to hunt. They had no hunting skills,
right.
no type of no type of way of surviving when they came over to what was considered the new world at the time.
Right.
But when you get fast tracked into after what was happening, especially if you look at what happened to Jesse Washington, and figures like that you see of people on Google when you look at what was happening, they were taking parts and eating them and souvenirs and things like that, making postcards. But, I'm tired of society dictating on how we actually come together
right.
and gather. I think that goes along the sides of people adopting different terminologies that, tend to be called terms of endearment.
Sure.
We really need to look at how they structured these things. And we just need to redefine them because we are people of love. And so with that being said, I'm always try to get with my people as much as possible because when we are in close proximity, we can have better and greater discussions to,
absolutely.
Grow one another.
Absolutely. Total absolute. Yeah, y'all. So that really covers the birth of Jim Crow, and the next section is actually the death of Jim Crow. And then once we get through that part, then we're going to get to the birth of mass incarceration. And so again, this book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, written about 10 years ago, but it may as well have been written yesterday, maybe may as well have been written 5 minutes ago, because ain't nothing changed. And so, I ask myself, like, what's the point in reading all of this when we look at what's going on in society right now? For Black Americans, I mean, we're struggling as far as having any level of control at all, period, any level of equality. And when I say equality, I mean, can we just get the same sentence that the other man gets if we commit a crime? Can we, if a police officer stops a white woman or illegal immigrant and they're snatching a gun out your hand and throwing bricks and rocks at you, how come they get to get a sandwich from Burger King, but yet and still our family got to go to a funeral? I mean, we don't even have that level of equality, and it's not they don't intend to give us that. And then what do we do about the fact that there was once? What do we do about this racial bribe? Because I believe that that's still in effect. There was a time, and Michelle Alexander alludes to it a couple of times in this book. Dr. Claude Anderson talked about it specifically with Black Americans and the Jewish community of how they work together. Can we ever get back to that? Do we recommend that, or do we need to even desire to move that way, but maybe switch up the rules or something? What do we do about that, y'all? Anybody?
I think what it is and why Sister Michelle wrote this book, and you said something real interesting. She could have wrote it 5 minutes ago. I think you made that statement, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but to me, what that comes through to me is we read these books to upgrade our thought, speech, and action. The reason why things are still the same, in my opinion, is because we don't upgrade our thought, our speech, or our action.
Oh, Brother
And
Muko.
when you don't upgrade your thoughts, your speech, and your actions, and they are the very things that get you something called results or solutions, then you repeat the same things that you're going through. You get the same results. So, all these books that we read, I suggest that we read them with a mind frame of upgrading our thought, our speech, and our action. Just like Sister Rella was just saying, I'm not going to let nobody stop me from gathering with my family. And, well, okay, but that's not barbecuing. You know what I'm saying? That's called reuniting, reunion with your family. And nobody's saying stop that, but we got to clean up our thoughts, our speech, and our action for the generations after us. You know what I'm saying? Our babies and our babies who ain't even born yet. And all of us value that in this space. And I know for sure 100%, all of us from Rella, Trouble, me, you, to Black Native, to everybody in the space, I know all of us value that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we live for, and that's also what we'll die for. You feel what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I just suggest that, well, first of all, thank you again. I can't thank you enough for reading this book. And just to your knowledge, I've never read this Michelle Alexander's book. But I can attest to a lot of what he's saying in this from other information that I have read from other scholars that are repeating the same sentiment. And what that proves to me, the evidence that shows to me, is that we're not upgrading our thoughts, speech, and action because this is still going on. The white supremacists is still pulling the string.
Yeah,
you know, and
that racial bribe. Well, so let me ask you this, Brother Muko. Let me ask you this. So what about that racial bribe? Should Black Americans try to pull up with a different type of bribe? And can there be, and I'm going to say this, let me say this for the record so there ain't no doubt. I'm not saying, oh, let's all get together and hold hands and we are the world. I'm not saying that. But what I do believe is that in this education, like you said, Brother Muko, upgrading our thoughts, our speech, our action, to me, this information is important because the very people who claim that, well, I didn't own slaves. My dad didn't do it. We don't have that. Okay, well then, understand what actually went on. These are the very people who should be saying, no, we're not going to ban these books. We're not going to ban CRT. We're going to teach the Reconstruction period in its entirety. We're going to teach what the thoughts and what are the thoughts and prayers of the founding fathers were when they created this Constitution. If you know what,
Mel?
Yeah.
You know what? I think that Ice Cube has the right position because he didn't just sit around and wait for the NBA to continuously hand in Black men their heirs to kiss, right? He said, I'm going to create my own table and you're going to have to come to me, right?
Yeah,
and I think that our bribe is not a bribe. It is literally what the mafia does. They don't give you an option. They tell you what your choices are. Right? And I know that sounds contradictory, but listen, hear me out. Even the gangs do the same thing. They say guilt by association. So if you going to say that your ancestors didn't do X, Y, and Z, but you sat in this country and benefited off the practices of white supremacy because you did nothing. You made no noise. You didn't stand in no gap. You didn't make sure that in areas where they're talking about CRT or DEI or the woke conversation, that it wasn't turned into some degenerate, talking point that people can take from either point of view and run down the street with it. When you know that you have scholars like Dr. Bell who created the CRT discussion and not in the lens that is being abused and used today. Or you know that woke was not created for people to run down the street and make it seem like for people to be aware of their surroundings and the people and practices somehow is a bad thing as long as it doesn't benefit the Black community. So at the end of the day, my thing is we no longer have the option of giving people options anymore. Now we just need to tell them how it is that they get to show up when it comes to us creating our own tables, creating our own platforms, and our own methods of getting information out.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer subscribe to idiocracy or degeneracy. That is my level of capacity. You don't get to continuously run us up into a burning building, and that goes for even some of the people that are in our community that keeps upholding the degeneracy in our community.
So
you don't get no access no more.
So in your opinion, Rella, One Love, can there be a multiracial alliance like there used to be? Can there be that?
I believe so, but we have to, as we've done, to make sure the onus is that we are
the priority.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that we are also defining how we show up when other communities want to come and trade and do business with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I'm seeing is getting ready to really, really, I think, take hold, hopefully within the next, not even, 5 years, the next 2 years, is that we really start to shape up, hey, we're going to do business, but you're also going to recognize us as who we are. Vivek, the Indian who was on CNN, you don't get to dictate how you want to talk about the history of the Black Americans. We tell you, not the other way around.
Exactly. And let's not forget, we talked about yesterday, or the other day, we talked about how in the 70s, the mid 70s, major criminologists said, hey, the prison system's on the way out because people have good jobs. People with good jobs and in good socioeconomic positions, they're not out here committing crimes. They don't give a damn what the penalty is. The penalty is not what's stopping them from committing crimes. It's because they are gainfully employed and can provide for their family, which is why they're not out here committing crimes. So it's just, I don't think I'll ever forget that. Let's see, who is that? Commander, I see you got your hand up. What's up? What's going on?
Hey, how's it going, Queen? I got that book on my shelf.
Mm-hmm.
I got that book on my shelf.
Yeah.
That's one of the books I use in my grad school to go at these suspected WSs in the educational system,
Mm-hmm.
Also, I just want to let people know I created a new theory called the critical Negro lineage theory. I want them to ban CRT. I want them to ban CRT. Make it about lineage, and put some money up on it. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be. Hey, sister. It doesn't have to be strictly all Negro. We just say we can sum it up. We can sharpen it up, but we have to have a starting point when it comes to speaking of our lineage and the issues and the atrocities that has happened to us as a group.
Yeah.
I feel that CRT does not do that. It kind of puts us at I feel like at a disadvantage. If we make it more lineage based, I think that would be more aligned to our interests.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this. And you know what? I'm going to tell you that off the top. That's interesting because CRT actually evolved from LRT, legal race theory. So I can see where your idea could take hold. But here's 2 points I need to make. For starters, there are multiple definitions swirling around about what CRT is. So that's the first problem. And then the second point that it's imperative to be made is that CRT does address the lineage piece. This is why they want to ban it. This is why they don't want it, because it speaks the truth of how the Constitution was created. It speaks the truth of how we as Black Americans were treated upon our release after being kidnapped and brought over here. Okay, so we what we don't want to do is destroy the foundation in order to do a spinoff. We don't want to do that, but we want to maintain that foundation and using that spinoff. I don't see anything wrong with that piece of it. But those are just my thoughts. And JV, I see you have your hand up. What's going on, bro? Speak your mind.
Yeah, what's up? Yeah, so many good points being raised in this. I just wanted to add a little bit.
Sure.
To the piece where, these people are not able to even farm and take care of themselves. But I think in addition to that, they're antisocial. Because how do you come to a land where people know how to till the land and get resources from the land, and during your travels you have to resort to eating yourself? So just being so disconnected from people, that hyper anti-sociopathic behavior creates an environment where you eat your own family. Another thing that's raised, the multiculturalism thing, I really think we need to move past that. Strategically, it makes so much sense because you need numbers.
Yeah.
But we see history has dealt us.
Right.
And the grift is on. The grift is on. Everybody's coming here grifting on our story.
Right.
It's happening. I know we want it to feel better. We want the numbers, but we have to be present. We have to be engaged with what's going on. And people are self-serving, even so much to the extent you look at people's cultural reality, it's so much not like ours. You even have countries, and trigger warning, they marry their own cousins and nieces and shit. Shit is really weird, so but it's it's crazy, and we kind of trying to integrate people's cultures into our culture, and they're not having it. They just want a bag, whatever. So I don't know. Y'all can go wherever y'all want.
And now you don't. Now, JV. Now I love what you just said. And here's what. Like I said, I'm trying to be careful what I'm saying because I don't want anybody to get up out of this space or off this YouTube and be like, "Ooh, Mel trying to get all of it." I'm not singing "Kumbaya," but there's somebody. That is not what I'm saying.
No. And I get you.
No. And you're not. Listen, I don't hear, and you're not saying that to me. I'm just putting that out as a disclaimer because I want to get into a little bit of something more you said because you spoke all facts right there. So should we? Because I feel like in the past we sat back and we let the Jewish community encourage us, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, we let the Jewish community encourage us for integration and do this and do that. And they said, y'all go over there and argue about this point. And while we were over there arguing about this and that, they were over there securing their reparations. Okay. But so we weren't in the forefront. We weren't using our inside voice and saying, yeah, we're going to go over there and get that as soon as we get the same hookup that you over here working. And so that's why I'm wondering should we approach it differently? Would a multiracial collaboration as has existed in the past, would that work? Would that be effective? That's what I'm wanting to know. Rella, you got your hand up. Shout out to Black Native in the spot. Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
Definitely shout out to Black Native and everybody on this in the space. And this is the reason why I say that, a lot of people have their own perspective, right? And then somewhere in the chapter, once you actually start to combine a lot of the facts and you start to combine a lot of the theoretical information, you realize, again, this is why I go back to people saying, hey, I want to create my own thing. Well, creating your own thing is not new. And I implore people, if that's what you're going to do, create your own thing. But you cannot, sit and actually
decimate
decimate our founders, who, like Dr. Bell, who literally was actually trying to uncover the school of thought of what was happening in law.
Come on.
And now we have people running down the street, even Black people running down the street with misinformation on what CRT actually was and is. To the point where they're championing the same thought processes of other people to pretty much erase people who've actually done the work, professors, educators, people who are literally in the school of law for our benefit. Like I don't approve that.
Yeah.
Like Dr. Bell and his team did a good and a granular work, and he talked about it for the Negro. He talked about it as the impact of people not recognizing what is happening with Black Americans and how law is actually being applied. I think, to Michelle Alexander's point, he was also, Dr. Bell and his team was trying to point out the fact that law is being applied unevenly, and you can see here's why. And so when you look at the new Jim Crow, now we go back to these people have been doing this from the dawn of time, but they've changed the application. They just have not changed their practice.
Their outcome, their goal, their objective has not changed.
Correct.
It's just the strategy and the implementation thereof that has morphed and modified. And let me just do this real quick segue. You guys, my YouTube channel is in the Jumbotron. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And the main reason why I want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel is because we want to get it out in the algorithm. We want to make sure that this conversation and others like this are getting out there into the atmosphere, because it's when we all are reading, Brother Muko said it best, when we're uplifting or modifying our thought, our action, and the way we interpret things, that's where change is going to happen. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I don't have that many. If you're scared I'm about to get paid, don't worry about that. We ain't there yet, but just subscribe so we can get it out and get more of this conversation to a larger audience. Black Native Girl, you was on fire in Black American States space last night. I don't know if you remember what you said about the weak part. And if you come on up off the mic, if you remember what you said, girl, please just say that one little quote. I want to hear, girl, you laid that out. Go ahead on, girl. What's tea?
I'm so humbled by you acknowledging what I said. Excuse me. Let me just say peace to you, sister. Peace to Trevor. Peace to Brother Muko. Peace to my sister Rella. Peace to Jay-Z. Peace to Shantae down there. I see you and the Negro and everybody else in this space.
Absolutely.
Didn't know you had a YouTube channel. Thank you for letting me know, because I will be subscribing immediately.
Thank you, Native.
I haven't read. I came in late to the conversation, so I don't know how much I can add, because I haven't read Michelle Alexander's book. But from the gist of me just hearing the conversation, you're speaking about should Black Americans have pride? Should we continue to show pride in ourselves? And can we become part of economically this multi-generational America that we're in? Yes, we can. We can still keep pride in ourselves and practice group economics. But like Sister Rella said, lay down the ground rules. You don't do shit unless we tell you what we want. You can't come in here like the Jewish community and convince us to look this way while you over there getting your community together, while you got a police force within inside the city. I used to live in Crown Heights, which was predominantly a Jewish community. I lived in Bensonhurst, which was predominantly an Italian community. The Italians had the garbage, and they had the construction. The Jewish people had the school system, and they had the bank. And they relegated that to themselves. They did not share with Black America. So yes, we have to have our own, and we lay down the law. This is our shit. This is how we want it to be done. If you don't like it, kick the road, kick rocks. If you want to do business with us, this is how we're laying it out. We have to do this. We cannot be, we are losing ourselves because they're always trying to assimilate with everyone else, but nobody else is actually inviting us to their cookout. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, and giving us equal share and the same amount of sweet potatoes, but we ain't trying to have none of their potato salad.
They eating steak and they giving us hot dogs. They giving us chicken. They giving us chicken franks. Okay,
what they giving us? Beef. Yeah. Not
even beef. This is the relationship that we are finding ourselves in, and now it's always been Black and brown, LGBT and Black. Everybody is always attached and they're riding on our hip.
Right.
And we got to shake them off and say, no,
Yes.
because we're thinking we will be considered a underclass, a permanent underclass in the year 2030. They say 2050, it might be sooner.
Come on.
So we definitely have to get our shit together and practice group economics, and everybody is not going to come, and everybody is not going to want to practice that. We're going to have individuals, and that's okay. But as a collective, we have to do it. There's no choice now. We are being forced.
Yes.
And it's sad that we have to be forced to want to do it now. But it's think or die. We're at that level right now.
Indeed.
And what I said in that space yesterday, if nobody is mad, if you're not angry at what you are seeing being done to our community and to our people, you are a coward. And I repeat, you are a coward. And that's where we at right now. And that's where I'm at right now. And I believe most of the people in this room are at that point. We see the emergency. We are bleeding out. Bandages. We can't keep putting Band-Aids on a gunshot wound.
Come on.
And I'm going to say one last thing. Dr. Henry Clark said, Black America don't owe nobody nothing but a kick in their ass.
Well, sir.
And I land on that. Thank you.
No, thank you, Black Native. And Tatiana over here on the YouTube is like, Black Native, sister girl, she giving you the fire emoji and the 100 and the bullseye target emoji. Talking about preach, sis. Yeah, you said a thing, girl. But just for a quick overview, the new Jim Crow book by Michelle Alexander, she opened up, she discussed some historical facts about that there was at a time a multiracial alliance. I think the man's name is Lerone Bennett Jr. Matter of fact, here it's on this page here. Let me just read this real quick. It says, back there, before Jim Crow, before the invention of the Negro or the white man, or the words and concepts to describe them, the colonial population consisted largely of a great mass of white and black bondsmen who occupied roughly the same economic category and were treated with equal contempt by the lords of the plantation and the legislatures. Curiously unconcerned about their color, these people worked together and relaxed together. So there was a time when it wasn't all about banana and the rah-rah-rahs. And what we just covered about I'm about to say Protestant, but the populace, where they had that multiracial movement, which had some level of success, because they were advocating and moving forward and making advancements on behalf of black and white, low socioeconomic positioned individuals. It's just until that racial bribe was presented is when they said, "Oh, well, shoot, we ain't part of y'all now. We got that white supremacy card." That's the birth of not white supremacy, but privilege. That was the birth of privilege with that racial bribe. Go ahead.
Well, I know in Wilmington, North Carolina, just to know a little bit about that history, that was going on in Wilmington, where you had black and white people working together on the same level. I think this was like right after Reconstruction. And you also, Fred Hammond was doing the same, Hampton was doing the same thing in Chicago. If you watch the movie, he was trying to get everybody together.
Yeah.
To defeat, the group that controlled everything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So he had the Hispanics, he had the whites, he had the Asians, he had the blacks, and we all had a common goal. But like you said, white people got greedy. They didn't want to share.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they figured, hey, why do we even have to? We got the gun power. You know what I'm saying? We can intimidate black people who steal their land. I heard they stole over $14 million acres of land from black Americans.
Yeah. So, I saw that on Black's Post.
This is what happened. So I don't know whether we can get back to that.
Right.
Possibly. But we have to call the shots. We can't have outsiders dictating how we're going to run
being
our
our voice. Absolutely. Yeah, we have to use our own voice. JV, you got your hand up. Go ahead and unmute your mic, and then Rilla, you'll be after him. What's T, JV?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, I just wanted to land on that that multiculturalism thing.
Yes, sir.
I didn't mean to take a cheap shot with the incest thing. I was just trying to raise a point about different cultures and the way they operate and orientate themselves. And this topical solution that we have, this surface level, well, they're not white or they're colored. I think it's a little late. Like, we're not really looking at, we're playing war games here. There's a lot of academics, there's a lot of journalists and historians and so forth who put these books out. And I'm reading specifically Gary Webb's book, The Dark Alliance. He speaks about the Contras and these other political groups that are in Latin America. And they come here with this position that, well, your country did this and that and a third to me. Well, that's not entirely true. What happened was a lot of these political parties were in bed with three-letter agencies in the U.S. They were living off the fat of the land, terrorizing the opposition to the point of exterminating their opposition, their families, debauchery, wholesale drug trade, financing their politics. And then when a guard changes and their rivals take power, you know they want revenge, and they're going to do the same thing they did to them. Now somehow they get a visa to the U.S. And we're here like, hey, multicultural, come here. Yeah, that's your enemy. No, this is very much more deeper. We're playing a dangerous game here. Then you go into the records, and Gary Webb woke it up. You go into the immigration, you ask for the records, kind of visa. Well, we can't release that. Yeah, like this thing is very crazy. So I think we have to be a little bit more, lack of words, sophisticated with deciding what this multiculturalism thing is, because some of these people are armed, or these people are trained killers, or whatever the hell they are. I also wanted to speak to Michelle Alexander, the book or the text. I like this book when she goes into the way crime operates in different jurisdictions in the U.S., where it's not only in the black community, but crime is high in other suburban communities. And it ends up that argument where we can self-loathe and we can say, well, we need to do better and fix ourselves up and stop doing crime. Well, we're over-policed. And Michelle Alexander breaks that down. And it's over there and she breaks it down. So I can't wait to get to that part. Last thing I want to say about the CRT, even if we do the lineage thing, I think the play that they're doing, this is my opinion, is that they're trying to speak to the intersectionality. Well, within the black community or within the lineage community, we have these other groups who have sexual proclivities or they have whatever, their man lovers, whatever, and that's where the issue comes in. So thank you.
Right. No, thank you, JV. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you contributed to the conversation. And I'm going to tell you this, because CRT, that's something, that topic is very close to me, because I got a problem with the fact that they will not allow the true American history to be taught and these laws and all. So I'm mad about that. And so, I try to stay on top of it. But I will tell you this. CRT was never designed to include or highlight any LGBTQ perspectives. That has nothing to do with it. If you're black, whether you're LGBTQ or whatever, simply because you're black, this CRT impacts you. But it is an intentional purpose to combine LGBTQ, DEI, all of that, and put it all under that CRT umbrella. And they feel, I just read an article about it about maybe 6 months ago, where it's clear that was the point. They were going to commingle LGBTQ issues, trans issues, things of that nature, and put it all up under a CRT to facilitate banning it faster. CRT ain't got nothing to do with LGBTQ. And if you wanted to talk about, well, see, if the CRT is LGBTQ, wait a minute. Back in the day, when we came over here, they weren't they buck breaking our black men? Weren't they eating us? So this is an intentional purpose to confuse the topic of critical race theory and its actual content, which is essentially our history and the fact that this country was designed and built. All of its institutions and its laws were designed and built to disenfranchise Black Americans, period. Nothing more, nothing less. End of statement. That is CRT. One Love Rella, you got the mic, baby.
Thank you, sis. So, JB made a great point, and I want to also say that Black Native also made a great point, and I know that there are people in even our community who don't know the direction or how we need to move when it comes to the interactions of other groups, even people that look like us, melanated wise. But, from the lens of, I think, where we made the mistake, and I should say, you take the meat and leave the bones, right? You take the meat and leave the bones. And so when we look at, the things that people have done before us, they were laying out blueprints for us to take and to develop our own now architectural schematics to rebuild this ship. And if we're going to really rebuild this ship, it's going to take a lot of our, scholars, street scholars, a lot of people who are in the academics, and even people who have never maybe gone out and gotten, their professional degree or professor degree, but they have the wherewithal to actually say, okay, well, we're not going to just live on surface.
Right.
We're not going to just live on what we know. We now need to put a plan in place, and this plan has to be organizational, meaning that there are going to have to be particular people who are going to be the ones that are going to have to be a part of certain committees. Not everybody is going to be able to run the committees because we have seen how we can't get people per se in the same psychological or mental state
mindset
long enough to keep deep diving because we get sidetracked. And I want to say this, that we need to look at how important it's going to be to make these moves.
Right.
To make these moves, and people have to be willing to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to be willing to go outside of what you think because I always say, just always stay in the realm is you don't know what you don't know. You might think you know some things, but trust me, you don't know it all, and that you don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes because you only want to go so far because it makes you uncomfortable.
Right.
We have to get to a point where we're in a position once we get set up that we have to develop relationships to get into trade because remember, we're behind the 8 ball. We're behind the 8 ball. And if we want to make sure that we're setting up a new state and bringing to light this, what Michelle Alexander and Dr. Bell actually was talking about, because Dr. Bell even said that the people back then didn't even know how the impact of not understanding how law is implemented will hurt us going forward.
Right. And that is well after. Dr. Bell is after the Constitution. Okay? Well after that. Well after that. So y'all, we got about a good maybe 14 minutes left. Shout out again to Tatiana Harris, who stated that inclusion of the LGBTQ was to undermine our agenda, divide and conquer. And we've seen just in the first 2 episodes of this book discussion where Michelle Alexander has made it quite clear and pulled the covers off of the divide and conquer strategy that this country has used to keep us Black Americans at the bottom, the least to receive anything, but the most to get all the jail time, all of the retribution. So we got about a good 14 minutes or so left. Request mic if you like. Anybody else have anything else to say? Go ahead and put your hand up, and so we can get ready to close out. I see that we got JG on the panel. Was there something you wanted to contribute to the conversation? Or in trouble? I see you unmuted your mic. Go ahead, girl. What's going on?
Yeah, I just wanted to slide in just on the conversation about the multi-ethnic or moving towards with other groups.
Yeah.
Before we can even consider having that type of alliance again, there has to be some form of punishment for all of the backlash that we've all got from them previously, so that history doesn't continue to repeat itself. So first and foremost, we have to get to the point where we learn that group economics is going to just have to be a thing.
Right.
We have to work with each other and spend with only each other, because that is the only way that they are going to be punished fully.
Yes.
Because once we pull our funds from them, and as I always say, they can't eat if we don't feed them.
Come on.
So we have to starve them out by buying with our own, shopping with our own, and that's how they punish. We punish them to a degree. So before there can be any type of reconciliation or we start to work with them on anything, we have to show them what the punishment for your treachery of wanting to assimilate and go in the other direction
and accept the bribe.
Right, accept the looks like, because they don't know what it looks like, because we've never really spanked them, so to speak. They've never really got that spanking that they've been deserving for a long time now. So we got to spank them a little bit, send them. We can't just send them in the corner. They deserve the full ass for it.
Come on.
So until we can do that, there can be no talk. Right. And that has to go on for a long period of time of just straight group economics. There can be no talks of any type of reconciliation that way. Now, I understand that we need other people or collaborations in order to do certain trades, but that there should still be some limits on that. Right. There was something else I was going to add, but I'm sitting here cooking, so it erased my...
Well, you're cooking literally at the house, and you're cooking literally on this panel, Trouble. So we understand you cooking, baby. But I would say this. I would say that if there's going to be a multiracial coming together, then the only acceptable start to that would be for these other non-melanated, other non-Black Americans. Let me be very specific, that other non-Black Americans get behind our demand for reparations. Because that's the only way I'm going to believe that you down and you for my team. If you're writing your congressman and you are demanding that Black Americans receive reparations because of our lineage going all the way back to chattel slavery, then I might actually take a meeting with you. Okay, but that, to me, that's where that alliance starts. And then I just saw, I think on Twitter earlier today, where the reparations effort in Evanston, Illinois, they're talking about everybody gets it. And when I read that, I thought to myself, I said, you know what? Watch and see if that passes and it becomes implemented. Watch and see that it'll be a majority of non-melanated Black Americans who get the lion's share of whatever amount of funds are available. Watch them get it, and it'll be 2 or 3 of us that get it. That is lopsided, and that's the same thing that's been going on since we have been, we were kidnapped and brought over here to this country, period. Brother Muko, I don't know. Did you have your hand up? Because, Brother Muko, you got the mic, and then Liv, you'll be next, and then we'll hear from Black Native. Go ahead, Brother Muko.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, add to what everybody was saying, changing our values, changing the very things that we value is going to bring upon the change that we need. We can no longer go from this moment forward valuing the same degeneracy, or just like Sister Brella said, letting the degeneracy pass. You know what I'm saying? And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, awesome. Y'all, the YouTube channel's in the Jumbotron. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We want to get this conversation out in the atmosphere so that we can bring this understanding and this conversation to more people who are like-minded. Live, you got the mic, sweetheart.
Hello, shout out to everybody in the room, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I was just wondering why y'all was sitting here talking. Everything that y'all saying is spot on point. But the thing I'm sitting up here thinking about is we got all these different Black politicians that's in office that don't do nothing for us, that continue not to do nothing for us. They hear our cries, they hear everything that we're saying, but they still disregard what we're saying and telling us that you ain't going to get nothing, and therefore start working with other people against their own people. How do we get that to stop?
That is really so interesting, and that's so interesting. And the thing about that is, the crazy part about what you just said, Live, is that they go out and help all of these people, and then they focus their future financial success on our backs. So just like with the Asian population, you guys come over here and you can sell the Black Americans their hair and their nail polish and their eyelashes and everything that they like. So we're going to set y'all up and give y'all a hate crime bill and all that stuff. We're going to take care of you. And then your bread and butter is going to come from the very people we are trying to keep on below you, beneath you. So why are we still wearing these eyelashes and getting our nails done and wearing their hair when all we got to do is just stop going for 30 days? They won't be able to pay the mortgage on the buildings that they are running their businesses out of. So that's where that is. If they ain't going, if the politicians in office are not going to speak for us, then we got to use our own voice, and we will speak by withholding our dollar. That's one way, I believe.
Can I lay some ointment on that?
Yes,
can I lay some ointment on that real quickly?
Yes.
Now, Blake, I see your hand, Black Native.
Yes.
I want to lay some ointment on Liv and let Liv question.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when I was, and I appreciate her question, when I was actually a part of the group that, worked with Marcel, executive team, worked with Tamara, worked with Reverend William Somerville, and even Brandon Dean, there was a lot of pushback because a lot of people wanted them to actually speak a certain way. If you didn't sound like Marcel, then people didn't gravitate to you. If you sounded like Tamara, you only heard bits and pieces of what she had to say, but she was also well aware of the conditions of what was happening in Georgia and who was also pulling the purse string. So she had a particular perspective and a different platform. But remember, all these candidates that we all worked with, we vetted, we worked with them behind the scenes, and they all were on the same page when it came to reparative issues. The problem I think that we see is that we get offended when we get the vote, we get the type of politician that we see, but we are not holding ourselves accountable. And people don't like that word, accountability. We as the community who are asking the politicians who are voted into office to hold true to the values that they set forth by their word, does not always translate on paper, because why? There was nothing put in documentation from the community to the politicians that they voted for, meaning that Dr. Claude Anderson talks about how we must buy our politicians. We have to get lobbying groups that are actually going to work in our favor, because all the other communities are set up already. When I say that we are being out organized, it is not, just for, shits and giggles, excuse my language, or it's not just to say it. It is a true fact, because we saw how ballots work. We saw how the voting works when it comes to pulling the rolls. We see who votes, who doesn't vote, and we see the outcomes. And, I think I've heard Tezlin talk about that win number in regards to what it's going to take to get people that we want in office, because they have an agenda that speaks directly to our issues. Right. We have to hold ourselves accountable. The community has to be on saturation on information, and saying, hey, these are the things that we're demanding, because we don't see these type of issues directly impacting us in a positive way. Right. And we want the candidates that we vote for to have these things on front, and we want them to actually address us as a community, not separate within a community. And we have to be vocal about that, and we got to show up. Absolutely. We got to get active and be committed, not just committed in voice or on social media. We have to actively now start to participate. Otherwise,
we are participating in our own demise.
Absolutely. And just a couple of things before you take the mic, Black Native. I just want to shout out Tatiana Harris also saying exactly, Mel, if they're not demanding reparations, there can't be integration. There can't be a multiracial affiliation because if it starts with reparations in 2023. And then also Black Faces in High Places has done nothing for us. No Black agenda, no vote. And the other thing, to your point, Rella, is why it's extremely important that we have not just one Marcel running for an office in one state. We need multiple, because when Marcel gets up there, he's going to need support. And so the more people that we get into office that are advocating on the things that we advocate for and discuss in detail in these Twitter spaces, the more people we have that are on that mindset, the more support they're going to have with each other, and less opportunity to be intimidated or sideswiped or redirected in working towards our disadvantage. Black Native, you got the mic, sweetheart. What's T?
T is that the politicians, Black, white, Asian, have always taken advantage of the Black community. They see that we have an immaturity level when it comes to politics. They feel the only thing we need is for them to come to the church, bring some collard greens and wear Timbs, and twerk with us for a couple of hours, and that's all that'll satisfy us. They're not, unless we demand and we put our foot down, we're not going to get policy, because they don't feel that we are aware that we need. They know we need it, but I guess we've been lackadaisy, and they've been so used to taking advantage of our community for so many years. We're afterthought right now, and there's ushering in immigrants to replace Black Americans. This is not a coincidence. I'm wondering how long has this been in the making, where they just said, shit, let's just open up the floodgate.
Right. And I think it's been in the making for a very long time, because you see the ease in which these leaders in these different cities, the money.
How they're setting them up,
yes.
They're setting up shop, they're already, trying to get them to vote.
Don't
even
need
though
a study.
Mm-hmm. They're no study. They're giving them money. They got apartments set up, houses set up.
Yeah.
Their kids are getting scholarships. So this has been in the making. They've been plotting this, I'm going to say, for the past 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they see that their numbers are dwindling. They need to reinforce white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's allow these immigrants to come in, because they know that they're just grateful to be here, and they'll be the pit bulls.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Know that they can try to keep them on a leash, but if you see what's happening in New York,
they said bump a leash.
That leash is they said fuck it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they out there beating the cops up.
Come on with it. So, and living through it though. That's the thing.
Knocking the tasers out their hands. So they might not be these people that they brought in, that they thought they might be able to control.
It's gonna backfire.
Or have them sign up for white supremacy to turn against us, are out of control.
Yeah.
So they got to figure how to reel these people back in. Because right now they ain't following the plan that white people set for them.
Come on,
in New York City alone.
Absolutely.
So, we need to hold, like, we had this discussion. This was the space Black Majority had last night. The Black Caucus, he brought up some information. They serve 80 million people, but only 17 million are Black Americans, but they call themselves the Black Caucus.
Well, and they I'm sorry, go ahead.
The NAACP hasn't done nothing since 1962.
Come on.
Let's just keep it real. These people are not here to serve us. Well, they are here to get our money and to move on to the immigrants, because that's their main priority right now. It is not us.
Right. And the biggest thing about it is the fact that they have told us to our face, hey, I can't just take care of you. There's other people we got to take care of. And we sat down and let them get away with that statement. That's problematic. Trouble, you got the mic, sweet love.
Oh, yeah. So this kind of goes all the way back to what you were saying earlier, Mel, about how they politically bribe the other races.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been, the way white supremacy works and has always worked is we are the ones to a degree that creates the system that they inevitably use against us.
Right.
They sit back and they watch and they plot. And when they set down these traps or they set down these things and we make our way around them and they watch how we get around them. And so they put the next thing in place to impede us from making progress. So that's what they've always done, and that's what they continue to do. So even when it comes to us getting together with each other and organizing before we can have that multi-racial or biracial unity, we have to always understand that they're watching and they create the system.
Right.
And so even within that, we have to hold steady to what it is our plight is. And I don't know if we've always done that because we continue to get to a place to where we feel like we have arrived and the thoughts and the actions that we had going into these things, we cease to continue to do them. And so we have to not cease to continue to do them again because white supremacy is only going to watch what we did to get around the traps that they laid and then continue to think of more traps to lay to keep us from getting to the goal it is that we seek.
Right.
So right now, as it is, these other nations are so used to eating off of us. And like Black Natives said, they realize that we are politically immature. We want these things. We say we want these things, but our actions haven't shown them that we really want these things. As Rella was saying, we have to be accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable.
Right.
So we got to stop saying that we want these things to change and actually show them that we want these things to change. We need to mature politically.
Right.
And so right now we're in a situation with these other nations of people who, well, it's slavery by another name.
Yeah.
Because they're selling us to the highest bidder from each nation. Well, the agents come in and will allow you to set up shop in the Black community, sell them their hair, their nails, their that, your food, your goods, and they do that with all of the nations. A corner store down the street from me I have an Arab one, and the one a block over from it is Mexican ran, but it's always had Black people that ran the store, so you thought it was still Black owned, but it's not.
Right.
So I went there for the last night, and there's now a sign on the door with all of these Mexican foods and stuff that they're getting ready to start selling inside of the store.
Yeah.
And one of the workers, now they have this new worker that's in there. She's dark skin and complexion, but she speaks Spanish. So I walked in there, and for the first time, I seen nothing but Hispanics inside the store, and I'm like, "Where y'all come from?
Yeah.
Y'all wasn't here last week."
A whole hoodwink.
So we are being sold to the highest bidder. We are going through the movie Purge and the Hunger Games all at one time, and so we better start maturing politically before we reach that loophole where taxation always say we're in that 50-year loop that encompasses so many different things. Well, once again, they're trying to make us a permanent underclass. So we better start maturing politically and on all other levels.
Absolutely.
Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, get our emotional shit together.
Financially.
Financial and political shit together. I'll land there.
Thank you so much. So, really, you're going to be our last speaker, y'all. We're about a little bit over the 2-hour mark. And before you come off the mic, Rella, I just want to remind everybody in the room, my YouTube channel, the link is in the chat. Please subscribe. Want you to subscribe so that we can get this channel in the algorithm, get this topic of conversation in the algorithm so that we can begin to connect with additional like-minded individuals who can contribute to the conversation and get involved in the plan. So please subscribe. Don't worry, I'm not going to become rich overnight just by you subscribing. So subscribe, y'all. And share this space out. Rella, you got the mic, and then we're going to wrap it up. Go ahead, Rella.
Thank you, sis. Trouble was spot on, Black Native. I think everybody would listen. Cooking with that
Sunday
good,
brunch.
with that good grease.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I want to say that she's so right. And that's why I don't get into the arguments of, when people start to say, oh, well, black women need to stop wearing hair, stop doing this. Well, you know what? People frowned when I said that, well, we need to start creating restaurants that cater to what our people like. We need to start creating businesses that cater to what our people like. And then the money, as Trouble was saying, circulates in our community before it leaves. And it also helps to develop our community before it leaves. What they have been able to do is they've been able to sell us back us. Mm-hmm. We are not selling them back their assets.
Right.
And so the way you do that is we have to do more exporting than we do importing. Mm-hmm. And when people start to understand that, they start to understand that there is room for so many of us to have a particular business that actually has a space and room for us to sell them back them.
Right.
That means we get to start developing our own stores. If for the women that, because we're not going to stop people from getting their nails and hair done. We're not going to stop men from going and having their, black men from going and having their, levels of entertainment or whatever it is that they like. Right. So we need to sell them back them. We need to sell these people back themselves because they have turned this into every few years. They are allowed to allow other groups to exchange the hands of who's going to make money off the Negro, or I should say, who is going to make money off of selling the Negro. Mm-hmm. That is actually this time, right? And that there's that video on C-SPAN when the U.S. Commerce was actually even promoting what it looked like to sell to the Negro as a new huge business and commodity for not just the United States, but the world. Yeah. And so when we look at this, we need to look at it as we are repositioning ourselves, not just for the United States, but the world.
Thank you.
And we are going to sell their asses back themselves, and we are going to reposition ourselves as being the lender and not the borrower. Right. And I landed there.
And I thank you for that. And I'll tell you what, you would say, well, what's a remedy? What's a solution? I know one thing is there should be a waiting list of black women trying to get their cosmetology license so they can just come on in and usurp this Asian dominance on the market of nails, estheticians, and all of that. All we got to do is put ours in position. And if that means you need to go to somebody's beauty college for a hot minute so that you can open up your own nail tech salon, then let's get to work. Let's get to work. Because I believe that as soon as we put this Asian hair care business out of business, okay, with all this lack of respect, once we put them out of business, that's going to make one hell of a statement and a very loud voice. It says, oh, shit, when they organize, they don't organize this all the way out the hood. And y'all can stay in that vacant corner store that you have, where the rent is due, because we're not coming in there buying a damn thing. Okay? So we have to be more strategic. So I want to thank everybody for pulling up into the Twitter space, everybody for pulling up on the YouTube channel. I appreciate it. Again, y'all, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, not because you're going to make me rich overnight, but because it's going to get it in the algorithm and we can get more like-minded individuals involved in the conversation and buying into all of the good ideas that were contributed in this conversation today. That's the whole point. So that's it. That is the podcast. I do want to shout out Tatiana Harris for staying from the beginning to the end. Everybody else that pulled up in the YouTube streets. That's it. That's the podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, replay gang, leave a comment, because I want to hear from you. And until next time, y'all, we will see ya when we see you. Welcome to the Only Male Cruz Show, the We Own Your Head podcast. Discussing topics that make you say, how and where can we improve as a society? From a Black American's perspective. Copyright disclaimer regarding fair use is in full effect. The views and opinions expressed in this show, you guessed it, they're all mine. Catch this live, be ready to speak. This is a call-in show. Be Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, replay gang, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Let's go to work.